Well, on Seinfeld, she caused a rumpus when she portrayed Doris Columbus and Eddie Korzan.
I hear there's problems with the mic. Can you hear me? I'm loud. You can hear me, right?
Terry, can you push it down a little bit because you can't see over their faces? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't need this. It's okay. I'll hold it in my hand. I love being served like this.
I only do this for you, Amy. Can you? Is this good? Is that good?
I don't want it in front of my nose face. Let's just make it lower. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Is that okay? Can you see me?
You're hired.
When I became a mother, I failed every step of the way. And my failures led to a severe postpartum depression that landed me in a loony bin for the first couple of months of my son's life. This was not how I had envisioned becoming a parent. I figured I would be just like those women in the movies, which is where I learned everything about life. In films, the mother and child always bond immediately. She gazes upon him with tears of joy and says, "Well, hello there, you beautiful boy." Well, I also gazed upon my son with tears. Tears of profound and hopeless terror. Who is this creature? And how the hell am I supposed to keep him alive? I'm a single child from a small family. I had never even seen or held a newborn baby before. But I had bought into all the 60s feminist dogmas about childbirth. First and foremost, it has to be natural. No drugs. No episiotomy, no C-sections, no induced labor. If you do any of those things, your child will have lower intelligence, learning disabilities, seizures, and it will be your fault. Because poor little you just couldn't withstand the most excruciating pain that Satan ever did. Here's the real truth about the miracle of childbirth. It is a miracle that anyone who's been through it is willing to do it again. The labor went on for too long, and I couldn't push him out, so I had to be put under for forceps delivery. I failed at natural childbirth, and it probably created a special needs child. My husband, Benny, is Danish, and he was working in Denmark at the time, so I gave birth in a foreign country. Big mistake. After the birth, we moved to my father-in-law's weekend house because, again, from the movies, I fantasize about strolling in nature with my laughing baby. Well, the house was cramped and uncomfortable. The nature outside was dark and windy and rainy because this is Denmark. And anyway, there was no strolling possible because I was too overwhelmed to figure out how to get dressed in the morning. Plus, I couldn't stop crying. Now, if you happen to be planning a nervous breakdown, I have some advice for you. Do not have it in Denmark. That's because the Danes, like the British, consider strong emotions to be bad manners. Danish women are capable, stoic, and independent. I, on the other hand, was fragile, frightened, and exhausted. And my worst failure was I couldn't breastfeed. I I didn't like doing it. I was sure I was doing it wrong, so we switched to formula. And again, in our culture, giving your baby formula is child abuse. I had now probably given my special needs son an incurable autoimmune disease. I am the worst mother who ever lived. They find a Jewish shrink because they figure there'll be some kind of cultural connection. And he says, "What are all these foolish tears about? Go home, light the Shabbos candles, start preparing for Rosh Hashanah." I've never done any of that stuff. Why is he talking to me like I'm a character in Fiddler? And then he repeats what everyone's been saying. Motherhood is instinctive. Nature will show you what to do. Well, when nature showed me what to do, I must have slept through the class. I keep crying, and Tevye the shrink decides that I need to be hospitalized. The psych ward is in a gloomy old Dickensian building in Copenhagen. None of the other patients speak to me, partly because of the language barrier, partly because Danes do not talk to strangers. The other inmates all bathe themselves every day, they rinse out their underwear in the sink, they make their beds neatly, and change the water in their flower vases, while I lie there, unwashed, in my rumpled sheets, and suck on Marlboros while the flowers on my bedside table wither and die. Not only was I a failure at being a mother, I was a failure at being a patient in an insane I wasn't improving, so we flew back to New York and the psychiatric unit at Mount Sinai Hospital. My roommate was a novelist who had been married to a famous theater critic, and another patient on the unit was a gay guy who was obsessed with Judy Garland movies. Finally. My kind of people. In group therapy, we were encouraged to share whatever was on our minds. So I raised my hand and asked if anyone knew the most painless and efficient way to kill yourself. Apparently, the other inmates had also given some thought to this subject. And they all offered some really cool suggestions. It was the most fun I'd had in months. But the uptight shrink soon put a stop to the discussion. For some reason, she thought that my topic was counter therapy. But somehow, by some miracle, I started to improve. Mostly because the raging hormonal changes caused by the pregnancy had begun to subside, and I was starting to feel like myself again. We like to think that we're in control of our emotions, but more often than not, it's that old devil biochemistry who's in charge. One night, some old friends dropped by, and they entertained me with hilarious stories of their messy lives, and the friendship and the laughter suddenly made me feel that maybe life is worth living. The next day, Benny brought our son, Jonathan, for a visit. I picked him up, and he smiled at me, and just like in the movies, I said, "Well, hello there, you beautiful boy." It was time to go home. I had a domestic helper for 2 weeks, and finally, got the care and instruction and guidance that I should have had in the beginning. I never really needed the hospitalization or the drugs or the therapy. All I needed was a servant. I never told Jonathan about any of this. But when he was 18, my demented mother-in-law accidentally spilled the beans. I tearfully started to explain it was a hormonal balance. It wasn't because I didn't love you, yada, yada, yada. And he stops me and he says, okay, why are you making such a big deal about this? I've always known you were a nutcase. What's for dinner? So, I started out with absolutely no talent for motherhood. And in spite of all the birthing rules I broke, and in spite of all the nursing rules I broke, Jonathan turned into a smart and healthy and perfect man. Everyone always says, you have such a great kid, and the two of you are so close. How did you do that? And I laughed to myself, little do they know.